Well over a year ago, the ABC7i team started digging into accusations of a lab scandal at the University of Illinois, Chicago. Our exclusive reporting uncovered serious questions about a likely flawed test that now has thousands of marijuana DUI convictions in question. Police and prosecutors are still scrambling, trying to determine which cases are damaged and which defendants may be wrongly locked up. And the fallout continues today as new evidence and accusations of fake science at the lab are coming to light.
I know that I was not under the influence that morning.
Corey Lee still sits behind bars, convicted of driving under the influence of cannabis. In 2018, he was involved in a crash in rural Illinois that killed a father and his adult son. Lee's case, along with many others, were charged based on blood test results from UIC's AFTL lab.
It's really simple. Fraudulent science equals fraudulent convictions. Step up to the plate, release the people that have been convicted based on this rogue lab, do the right thing.
After an extensive investigation by the I-Team, internal memos and emails revealed potentially flawed test results from the lab, generating inaccurate numbers of a cannabis molecule called THC. The tests were used to determine whether someone was illegally driving under the influence of marijuana. The lab was also accused in court filings of covering up the flaws in testing methods since 2021.
This is what I would describe as a festering scandal. The consequences are great. You know, there's people who are charged with felonies, their life is certainly affected.
Following our reporting, the DuPage County State's Attorney announced the dismissal of more than a dozen cases involving the faulty tests. Other county prosecutors and police departments in the Metro Chicago area are now reviewing cases, including Cook County. Recently, the university's law firm released results of an internal investigation absolving the lab and UIC of wrongdoing, concluding the lab's methods were, quote, at all times appropriate and met accepted scientific standards, and that none of the analysts, quote, knowingly provided false testimony. But the report also says the lab's methods should have been modified to distinguish between two related forms of THC. Officials with UIC have repeatedly declined interviews or comment requests from the I-Team. ABC7's chief legal analyst says those investigation results are not an exoneration, especially with a key figure at the lab, Jennifer Bash, declining interviews by UIC's lawyers.
First, will there be a criminal penalty here? Will someone be found to have deliberately misled somebody else? Unclear from this report. It didn't find that someone had misled, but it also doesn't rule out that possibility, and I could see further inquiry there. The other question is, could somebody, the lab, be held liable in negligence for what happened here?
Now, the I-Team contacted forensic scientist Jennifer Bash, whose test methods at the lab and her testimony as an expert witness in many DUI cases are now being called into question. She declined an on-camera interview, but said in a written statement in part, quote, I was very disappointed when I read the article and saw it was filled with inconsistencies and falsehoods. Acting in good faith, I provided detailed responses to questions concerning the science behind the testing I conducted. Those responses have either been distorted or ignored. Throughout my career, I have presented facts based on sound scientific principles. While I understand that disagreement among experts is not uncommon in the courtroom, a differing scientific opinion should never be equated to dishonesty. The testing methods I used and the results obtained were scientifically sound, and I am unaware of any ANAB findings to the contrary. Bash is still certified by the American Board of Forensic Toxicology and can still testify in Illinois courtrooms. And joining me now is reporter Maya Dukmasova with Injustice Watch, the Chicago-based nonprofit journalism organization, which has just released its own extensive investigation into the lab. Maya, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, very extensive report here, and a large portion of your report centers on another marijuana test at the lab that Ms. Bash involvement in creating and overseeing that test, and her expert testimony in the courtroom. So what are some of the highlights?
So there were two major issues with the testing at the lab. On the one hand, there was the approach to testing urine in DUI cannabis investigations, which purported to be able to show whether someone was high while driving based on their urine. And this is scientifically impossible because THC, the active drug compound that the Illinois DUI law says you have to find in people's blood or bodily fluids, THC is not actually found in urine. So the lab performed complicated scientific analysis in order to essentially convert the metabolites of THC, which show up in urine for days or weeks after last use, back into the parent drug, quantify that, and then say this is how much THC the person had in their system at the time of driving. So that was one thing. And the second issue was what ABC7 had reported previously, which is that the lab's machines weren't really set up to tell the difference between Delta 9 THC, which is the thing prohibited by Illinois DUI law, and Delta 8 THC, which is not illegal and is a different compound. So in 2021, they appeared to have found out that their machines are not set up to tell the difference, and then didn't do anything to fix the method. And the internal UIC investigation report confirms that this is what happened.
Didn't do anything to fix the method for years at
Correct.
that point. Right.
Continued testing, continued issuing lab reports, and in 2024, after the university shut down human testing at the lab for unrelated reasons, for financial reasons essentially, not because of the faulty science happening there, in 2024, they ran a test again and saw, yep, indeed, our machines are not able to tell the difference between Delta 9 THC and Delta 8 THC, even though the Illinois DUI law is tied specifically to Delta 9. And essentially, they issued a letter to a bunch of state attorneys' offices saying, we had this problem going back this many years, potentially impacting test results, but they have not issued any amended lab reports or contacted a single defendant whose body fluids were tested to notify them that the results may have been inaccurate. Yeah,
and let's talk about that. What does this mean for those thousands and thousands of cases that are, in the court system right now or have been adjudicated even with test results that are called into question?
So it's unclear because no one even knows exactly how many cases there are, how many convictions there are. This would require a detailed data analysis that has to begin at the University of Illinois Chicago, because they're the ones that have all the lab reports with all the names of the people whose body fluids were tested. So defense attorneys who are working on trying to reverse wrongful convictions or investigate potentially wrongful convictions tied to the lab, they estimate that there are hundreds of people in the state who are still convicted based on the evidence from this lab. And you got to understand, most DUIs are misdemeanors. Most misdemeanor cases are resolved through plea deals. People hear that, oh, the lab report came in, it said that you were over the legal limit, and they take a plea and they move on with their lives. It's very, the maximum prison time for a misdemeanor case is a year. But you found one individual who is serving time for a felony DUI because of the deaths involved. I found another individual who is doing 31 years because he was actually prosecuted for murder and aggravated DUI based on the accident he caused when all the evidence pointed to the fact that he was having a psychotic break due to a mental health issue.
Right.
So it remains to be seen how many people exactly are still incarcerated or who are still carrying convictions on their record tied to this lab. But right now, the buck is stopping at the University of Illinois.
And finally, I mean, there are real questions out there still about oversight of the lab and any real meaningful oversight that could have stopped this or could stop this from happening again going forward.
Yeah, one of the shocking things in investigating the story is the total lack of forensic science oversight in our state. And Illinois is pretty typical for the United States. The only place that has actual forensics oversight in this country is Texas. But in Illinois, we have a Forensic Science Commission that was created by Governor J.B. Pritzker a couple of years ago. And it is housed inside the Illinois State Police and doesn't have any actual power to investigate or discipline forensics labs.